everything apple. And speaking of apples, we've got our celebrity historian Raffi Andonian joining us right now to tell us the history of apples, specifically apples in the Northwest Arkansas region. It's time for another Celebrity Historian segment with Raffi Andonian. And Arkansas was once the biggest producer of apples in the country. And now that has dwindled, but we're kind of making a resurgence. So here to fill us in on all of the apple history of Arkansas is Raffi Andonian. Thanks for hopping in, Raffi.
Of course, and it wasn't just Arkansas. It was Northwest Arkansas. Two counties in particular.
Yeah.
You had both Benton County and Washington County.
Yeah.
You know, in their peak, we're talking the early middle part of the 20th century, they put out 5 million bushels of apples per year, believe it or not. And it's incredible to think about that. More than 50 varieties that they would put out, and they even in the, just maybe 30 years prior to that, in their ascendancy, won across the board for the best apples at the St. Louis World's Fair in 1904. Believe it or not,
really?
Yes, a bunch of awards. Yep.
Wow.
So this was the place to be, Northwest Arkansas, known as the Apple Belt. Those two counties putting out so much, including the very well-known Arkansas Black, which was about 15% of those many apples.
So we had a big boom. We were putting out all of these apples, and then it sort of dwindled for a while. And there's great brands now and folks who are bringing it back. Like I mentioned, Black Apple.
That's
you got
right.
R.G. Macon and Carson up in Benton County. You even got this great apple brandy made by our friends over in B Branch. So what happened to kind of reduce the number of apples we were sending out in order to have a resurgence today? Yeah,
and before I say that, since you bring up the brandy and the cider, let me just mention as an aside that in that boom, part of what you have is supporting industries. And in the supporting industries, you're going to have all kinds of stuff, including barrel making that's taking place here in Northwest Arkansas. And of course, you're talking about distilleries with the brandy. You're talking about making cider, all kinds of things that are popping up with it. University of Arkansas actually started a program researching apples, which actually still exists today, and that has been put out nationally. So a lot of supporting stuff is happening when we're talking about in this boom. But what happens in the decline is a couple of things. One, you have a series of droughts, of course. Think about the Dust Bowl nearby, right? That affects here. Those droughts are going to really hurt the region. And then you have, related to that, the increase of disease that is taking place because there was kind of a push towards monoculture, having fewer varieties of apples when the market pressures are there, which makes you more susceptible to disease.
Interesting.
And then in addition, you have the depression. That's kind of, I think, the final blow when you're kind of still...
That was the uppercut. That was
absolutely. Now, in the meanwhile, what has also taken place is, of course, the Panama Canal in the early 20th century, that project. And when that happens, that opens up a completely different competition. And the northwest part of the United States, where, of course, major apple industry today has ability to compete because of cheaper shipping costs, thanks to the Panama Canal. So increased competition amidst all this also makes it challenging.
Because they're portside, right? They're right there on the ocean, right? So they can send it all over the world.
The Panama Canal makes it so you can do a shortcut as opposed to having to go, of course, all the way down to the tip of South America. So those things contribute to those factors. So it's kind of cool to see today, generations later, the revitalization of that tradition in some fashion to participate, because it is a big part of the heritage of Northwest Arkansas.
Absolutely.
And by the way, so is brandy. So is making the brandy. In the peak that we were talking about with the supplementary industries, you have close to 50 distilleries that are making this kind of stuff. Believe it or not, unbelievable to think about.
Yeah.
And in that process of having those distilleries, the funny thing is, as you get to the early part of the 20th century, they're not consuming the apple brandy here in Fayetteville because it was a dry county. Washington County is a dry county, so they're producing and sending it elsewhere. Now, when prohibition comes, which makes it illegal in the state of Arkansas particularly to even produce the stuff, that's what puts out the distilleries.
Right.
And so, that changes the whole picture, as you might imagine.
That's right. Well, that kind of leads me to think about Black Apple Cider, because that's something, Black Apple Cider, downtown Springdale, just celebrated their 10th year of being in production, and it's absolutely tasty. In fact, I think we should try some. I got
Let's
some.
do it.
This stuff is peach flavored.
So you had some peach on there.
That's right. But they got everything that you could want. And I think we should pour some in a glass maybe and just show off a little bit of what it looks like for folks that might be interested in the color and the texture. And this is chilled. You can, I can smell it from here, the apple cider. Yeah.
You know what's interesting is Arkansas Black making the cider out of this is really fitting, like I said, because that was one of the best known varieties. And today, in the tradition of winning awards in the past, the Arkansas Black Cider distillery guys, or not the distillery, excuse me, the cidery guys, have won number 4 in the top 10 in the nation.
Yeah.
So still winning awards today is the apples of Arkansas in some fashion.
Yeah, cheers to you, Black Apple Cidery. Raffi, thanks for joining us, filling us in kind of on the history of apples. We're having a resurgence right here. Cheers, everybody. Stick around. We got more happening later. Before we get out of here, we got to thank all of our amazing guests, including the one and only Raffi Andonian.